So I'm here with my dad, Roy Diteman, and we've been talking about his brother, Curtis Diteman, who died this last fall. Is that right, Dad? The fall, it's been about a year, would you say?
It's been a little under a year.
A little under a year. We've made it to the Garden Springs time, but I wanted to show you a picture really quickly of one of them when they lived in Prosser. Um, it's just darling, and we'll see if we can get it zeroed in on here. So this is Uncle Curtis is in his father, Curtis Diteman's arms, and Aunt Pat, Patricia Diteman Lang, and my father, Roy Diteman, are right in front of their mother, Lorna Diteman. So we're going to take it away, and you're in Garden Springs now, and tell us a little bit about the house and what it was like to live there.
Well, in those days, the costs were quite a bit different than they are now. The folks bought that house because they'd never owned one, and they'd been married about 15 years. So in 1945, they found this little farmette, I guess you'd call it that, and it was about 2 or 3 miles outside of Spokane on the Garden Springs Hill, close to the little Garden Springs School, and they paid for the 5 acres and the house and a couple of old sheds. They paid $3,000, which was a lot of money in those days, but wouldn't be a pittance today. Uh, the house had the electricity, and it was built around 1905, so it had the electricity and it had the water, but the water would go dry in the summer because it was a hand dug well. So one of the things they did after they were there about a year was they had nothing but an outhouse for toilet, so there wasn't an indoor toilet. So Dad hand dug a septic tank in and hooked up the house to a toilet, and he also put a tub in, and then within a year he hired a gentleman to come along with his sidekick, and they drilled a well in there, and they drilled that well through the hard basalt rock for 92 feet to get all kinds of water. So we had plenty of water then, and they had to I remember the pump they used was called a jacuzzi pump, and we thought, well, that pump can't do all that work, but it did. It worked real great. So we always had water then. We had a basement cellar kind of underneath, so there was plenty of storage for fruits and vegetables and things like that. And
I
we
just
had
remember there was always a big garden
yeah, lots of
garden there because I even remember that place. So they were there for a while, I'm assuming.
lots of garden there. It was lots
Yeah.
of garden space, and they had pretty big sized gardens and raised practically all the produce for
Did you
home.
guys work in the garden?
We worked a little bit. Mostly the folks did all the work. We worked some, but we weren't the best workers that I could remember.
Hmm.
We were always goofing off. One time I was a teenager, and I remember I was coming home, and it was already turning light, and my dad was already out working in the garden, and he said, "Well, you've been out tomcatting all night." He said, "You could go to work in the garden." And I said, "Well, I'm too tired now."
Oh.
So I couldn't. I was worthless
I
doing
know
that
one
then.
thing that you said is that you and Uncle Curtis shared a little bedroom or something,
Yeah,
or
the house has been remodeled since then. Dad took the upstairs down, but we had a tiny little room upstairs, and we had little or no heat, and we had two little cabin-like windows out in the front, uh, and the snow would sometimes sift in around the windows and come inside. But we had little bunks in there, army bunks and army blankets, and so we were pretty comfortable in the wintertime as long as we stayed underneath our blankets. But Kurt and I were always the ones to share something a little bit different, and we were a little older than the others, so